This is a podcast about both having autism and living with someone who has autism. My mom is Sonya, and I'm Josh, and this is Josh Has Autism.
Hey everybody, welcome to Josh Has Autism.
Hello.
Yes, well, I'm so happy that everybody's here with us because you have something that you wanted to share with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you came to me today and said that you had a revelation a while back.
Yeah, and it just occurred to me today to share it.
Yes, and so we were actually in the car going to the store. We turned around, came back so we could do this podcast.
Yeah.
All right, so take it away, Mr. King.
All right, so to start with, I'm going to start at the very beginning. It was probably 6th grade or so for me. So, one of the... Oh, let me... Wow, where to start? One of the things that I almost take for granted now is that I know how to identify my emotions and what I'm feeling and how I'm feeling it and why.
That's huge.
Yes. And the reason I say I take it for granted is because it's so commonplace for me to just understand it.
Mm-hmm. This comes natural now.
Yes. But this was another learned response. Not the response, but you know what I mean.
Sure, yeah.
And one of the things that really helped out with that was whenever I started middle school, was whenever I first started getting a thing called wraparound services. Could you explain that a little bit?
Well, wraparound services, there's like 3 prongs to it. One is a TSS, which is therapeutic staff support. That person met you as soon as you got off the school bus, and they were there and got you back on the school bus to come home. Mm-hmm. There was mobile therapy, which means that was a person that came to the house. And
usually once a week, right?
And sometimes a couple times a week. In the home, teaching you real time how to gain better control of yourself and to understand yourself better and to be able to manage situations. So they helped you in the home and in the community. And then there was a BSC, which is a behavioral specialist who wrote the treatment plan. And I guess it's actually 4-pronged because all of that was underneath a psychiatrist that did medication management.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So to add on to the TSS, they were with me throughout the entire school day.
Yes.
And they wouldn't necessarily interfere with what I was doing. Or I wouldn't say interfere. They wouldn't necessarily interrupt if something was happening. But as soon as it was done, they'd pull me aside. They'd say, hey, you did great on this. This is what you could have done instead of doing this, and things like that. And it stuck so much better than just going to the psychiatrist every now and then and trying to remember what happened when, and let alone inputting it into real time.
Yes, that was something that you had a very difficult time with.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
because you didn't know where to apply it.
Right.
And to take it a step even before that, you didn't even know to try it.
Right.
You didn't know what to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Let alone remember it whenever it happened to me so long ago. At the time, so long ago.
You're talking about
with the
psychiatrist.
Yes.
So like what you learn in an office, you can't translate to real time.
Right.
Yeah.
And in particular for this podcast today, involves the mobile therapist.
Okay.
Because one of the big things that the mobile therapist helped me figure out is how to identify what I was feeling and putting a name to it, which is really difficult.
whether you're on the spectrum or not.
I'll take your word for it.
Okay. Yep.
The biggest thing I think with that is that let me try that again. One of the things that really helped me in that aspect was the fact that I had read so much and would read so much.
Mm, yeah.
And so I had a huge lexicon of words or repertoire of words or whatever
Right.
that I knew what they were, but I couldn't always place them for how I was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So putting a name to what I was feeling was huge. So using that lexicon and what I learned from the mobile therapist,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to put them together and match words to how I was feeling. And one of the things that I remember trying to do is I remember seeing things like, on a scale from 1 to 10, are you feeling happy or are you feeling sad?
Mm-hmm.
Neither. I'm kind of upset I'm having to look at this thing. The artwork is horrible.
Yeah.
But so it was very limiting in that regards to try and pinpoint how I was feeling without or with the available charts and diagrams and stuff like that of that can help you pinpoint how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember seeing a piece of paper had 5 or 6 across and maybe 8 or 9 down, full of different faces, and right underneath of them had different emotions attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them were kind of iffy to me. And so it had to be explained to me that that emotions are not always don't always look the same.
Mm-hmm. You mean the same emotion in a different situation might not look the same? Or do you mean like across the board on that chart, emotions look very different?
The former. The
Okay.
first one you said.
Okay.
And so it was at the time I was at this point probably 7th or 8th grade,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even 9th grade.
Mm-hmm.
That I started to try and put together my own chart
Oh, yeah.
that would not only show the emotions but show how they could attach to each other, going from one emotion to another.
It might be. It's okay if you don't have anything, but do you have an example of that?
Sure, actually. Love and hate,
Yeah.
as a good example.
Yeah, that's a real good one.
So, sometimes you can just hate someone. Sometimes you can just love someone. I don't necessarily hate anyone.
Right.
But
I believe that.
For this
Example.
example.
Yep, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I know of several different ways off the top of my head where it can go through several emotions to go from love to hate.
Mm-hmm.
One could be love gets to infatuation,
Mm-hmm.
gets to jealousy,
Mm-hmm.
which then leads to hate.
Okay. And you figured that out from working with the mobile therapist, that are you talking about how one emotion leads to the next emotion?
That's part of it, yes.
Okay.
The other part is just trying to have a huge list of emotions and trying to put them on a piece of paper that could show how one emotion can lead to another. But what I realized and had so much difficulty with while trying to do this is that these emotions can branch out in so many different ways in so many different situations.
Mm-hmm.
And that on a piece of paper, it's not going to cut it. It's not going to work.
Right. But it helped you to understand
Yeah.
the piece of paper that had those that you created.
I couldn't even create it because there was so many different variables and things that made it difficult to try and lead one to the other.
So it just kind of takes into this spider diagram where
Yeah.
there's just if this then, if
Yeah.
this then,
Yeah, pretty
and
much.
there's so many. Yeah.
And so what I initially was trying to do was make a viable chart for someone that's on the spectrum.
Like for yourself?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't figure it out. And so I didn't give up per se. I stopped trying to write it down.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd go back to it every few months. So about somewhere between 3 and 5 years ago. From now.
Mm-hmm.
I had an aha moment.
I love those.
Yeah. And what this aha moment was that, you know what, it was probably 5 years ago.
Okay.
Because I was working with one of Chrissy's classes,
Oh, okay.
Dr. Ogilvy's classes,
Yep.
of middle school students.
Mm-hmm.
And
But whenever her name is involved, good things are happening.
yes, yes.
Yes.
And it occurred. We were doing something talking about different emotions because I was trying to teach them what I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what I did in that class. I was essentially I was a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the it popped in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh. I think I actually said that too. I sat back and said, oh my gosh. And what occurred to me is that trying to make a 2D representation of how complex emotions can be and how they interrelate with each other is impossible. In a 3D format, though, it is entirely possible. And you know how?
Mm-mm.
If you have a sphere, like a ball, and you had all of the known emotions written on the surface of it, you would sometimes come up with a if there was a line that led from one word to another, it would not go through another word. It would be directly from there to there. It might come close to another word. Like, let's say it has one word in between them on the surface. Because a ball is round, it doesn't go through that word. It goes close to it, though.
Mm-hmm. I see what you're saying.
And so, if those were clustered together in that kind of way, then every single emotion, because I remember thinking whenever I stopped trying to write them down back in middle school or high school or whatever, that if they, I remember it occurring to me that every emotion can directly link to another one. in however it comes about, there is always a possibility of one emotion going directly to another.
Mm-hmm.
In that huge list of words of emotions. So if they're in a sphere and there's a line going from one word to another, it can connect to every other word on there.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I had this thought, it blew me away. Because every emotion may have another route to go through to go through another emotion to get to the end emotion.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, it's still following those pathways.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very, very difficult to try and even picture this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in my head, even I'm just thinking of if one word were to have a line drawn to every other word in that sphere.
Mm-hmm.
It would look like a starburst or something like that coming from a single point on it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But that for every emotion to have that connecting line for every other word.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, just trying to picture that is
Right.
difficult.
It's kind of overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What made you realize or even think about emotions in the first place? The work that you did with the mobile therapist?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That makes sense. There was an awful lot of attention given to how you feel in different situations.
Yeah.
In effort to help you de-escalate.
Yeah,
when that happens.
Yeah, because by identifying how I'm feeling
Mm-hmm.
in any given situation,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes so much easier to then figure out how to de-escalate,
Mm-hmm.
let alone to inform others how you're feeling.
Right.
So, pinpointing how I was feeling was one part of it. The other part was actually putting a name to it.
Okay. How did you figure that out?
Part of it was just explaining how my body was feeling,
Mm-hmm.
what I wanted to do in a situation,
Right.
what I would just any similar emotions that I felt before that I knew the names of,
Mm-hmm.
and how they differed.
Mm-hmm. Did it help you to understand what emotion you were having?
Yes, very much so.
How tell me the difference between before you could understand the emotion
Mm-hmm.
and after when you could understand it. How was your experience different? How did it feel different?
The best way that I think I can explain this is by giving an example.
Okay.
So, whenever we originally lived here in Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
this was before wraparound services or anything else like that.
Oh, when you were little.
Yeah, when I was little.
Yeah, we lived here for 5 years, and
Mm-hmm.
your dad was still in the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, one day, because I played soccer a lot,
Mm-hmm.
which is different for someone on the spectrum, as I understand it. But I was good at it.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was practicing just kicking the ball up against the shed, and in the backyard, and the ball hit the corner of the shed and it bounced into the middle of the yard. So I start going out into the middle of the yard, and I because my eyesight at the time, even at the time, wasn't that great. I noticed just all these things moving around in my vision, and then I heard the buzzing, and I realized what it was, and I ran screaming into the house. And I left my ball out there and everything. And I couldn't explain to you guys what I was feeling, other than just saying, "There's bees everywhere." And surprisingly, I did not get stung, even though I was absolutely surrounded by them. Then Dad and our neighbor Barry went out and found out that the nest had been knocked over from the tree in the backyard, and he took care of them.
Right.
But they got stung a lot, though. Anyway, I couldn't explain how I was feeling because I didn't know how I was feeling, and it was very frustrating, but I didn't know what.
You didn't know to describe it as frustrating.
Yeah.
At the time, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it was so. I wanted to cry, I wanted to scream, I wanted to yell, but I didn't know how to express myself. I didn't know how to tell people how I was feeling. So that's part of the example.
Okay.
Once I learned how to define how I was feeling. Once I learned how to tell other people that I was feeling a certain way about something. Once I could actually express that to people, it wasn't so much that I only expressed how I was feeling to people. It was, I mellowed out a lot, in the sense that I wasn't constantly frustrated about trying to tell people what I was feeling. Because I could tell people what I was feeling, why I was feeling it, and how it was affecting me. And because of that, I could identify in myself what was causing me to trigger sometimes, how it was causing me to get upset about things that shouldn't have, really. Normally. I say normally, but I mean for most people it would not have triggered them.
So being able to put a label on the emotion that you're feeling, so that really helped you a lot. Did you begin to really understand the emotion itself, and to be able to look at those kind of independently, or was it just were you mostly observing emotions as they were happening, or did you go through like a mad scientist and have all looking at all these different emotions and how they go together and the words that are connected and how one word sort of means that but not necessarily, because
Right.
It sounds like you're talking about two different things: emotions and the words that you connect to those emotions, right? That in that sphere.
Right.
It was the words and how you can express yourself using them.
Right. By connecting them to those emotions, yes. So whenever I say the words in the sphere, by that point in time, I'm saying that in my head at least, I have connected what that emotion feels like and looks like to that word. So that whenever I'm putting it on the sphere or ball or whatever, that I can, for me at least, I can mentally connect it to and just know that that's what it is. So go ahead.
It's okay if you want to gather your thoughts with that. If you need a break, I'll go. But
so, what was it you're asking me?
So it's pretty awesome that you figured out the emotions and how they feel, and then connecting the words to those emotions. That's a different layer altogether.
Yeah.
Both are huge.
Yeah.
But
by identifying and putting that term with what I was feeling, by connecting them in that way, it really made it so that it would click. Like, I don't know about you, but whenever I would build Legos as a kid, let alone now, whenever I'm helping Connor, whenever I put the pieces together and it clicks together and it makes something, whenever I finish it and I can see, oh my gosh, I just built this amazing thing, that kind of feeling is what happens every time that I was able to attach what I was feeling to the name of what I was feeling. And so, because I was able to do that, they were together forevermore.
okay.
And
yeah.
There are variances, I think, such as the word vary. So I'm angry or I'm very angry. I'm sad or I'm very sad. Those kind of things.
Well, those are descriptors.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, is that the descriptors would help with the variances of how I was feeling, as well as being able to say that I'm feeling more than just one emotion right now.
Okay, yeah.
And by being able to combine these emotions and tell someone that I'm feeling this combination of emotions, let alone sometimes in what percentage of those emotions I'm feeling.
Sure.
It really it made a difference, a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so whenever I was able to connect these emotions to the words, there are also nuances that I had to learn that go with each emotion. And so by figuring out which emotions felt what way, I am then able to express myself a lot easier to other people. And in the process, not only do I further understand how I'm feeling about things, but I'm also able to figure out how to manage those emotions. Because by understanding what the emotions are you about to sneeze or yawn?
I'm about to sneeze. I'm about to sneeze. Sorry. I don't want to interrupt. very, very insightful and helpful.
Yeah.
And I want to, you go.
Whichever side you feel the sneeze coming on, close the opposite side, and not breathing harshly, but only out through your nose, in through your mouth, out through your nose of that nostril, not forcefully but continuously.
Yeah.
And it'll go away.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And you didn't sneeze.
I didn't sneeze. I did what you said. I didn't sneeze.
So by being able to pinpoint those emotions and say what they are and identify how I'm feeling about something, I can then, because I have identified what the emotion is and why I'm feeling it, I can then work on how I can make it so that like if I'm depressed or sad or something like that, why am I feeling this way?
Right.
Okay, since now I know why I'm feeling this way, what can I do to change it? And sometimes it doesn't work. I'll admit that. Because sometimes there's not really a reason to be feeling a certain way. And that's one of the hardest things to deal with, is that sometimes there's not really a reason for you to be feeling the way that you are.
But you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a question about this. You developed this understanding, and then you really went about working on recognizing how you feel. Are you able to benefit from that understanding when you're having like a sensory issue? Or is it only after the fact that you're able to then think about it and rationalize what the emotion and why? And
sometimes I'm able sometimes I am able to understand how I'm feeling and why I'm feeling that way. The issue that occurs is that sometimes I'm not able to articulate it at the time because of being overwhelmed and overstimulated, and it's it's like you know how sometimes there's like a jet engine. If you're close enough to a jet engine, you can't hear anything else.
right.
It's kind of like that, where me trying to articulate it gets drowned out.
It's just too overwhelming.
Yes.
And right.
And so even if I'm trying to articulate it, I can't, because it's just being drowned out.
Okay. By everything else that you're experiencing.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And sometimes it's the situation that I'm in that is drowning that out. So it's
right.
Yeah.
So I would say an example of that is, Thanksgiving is this week. And so everybody's going to be here. And it's going to be loud, because it always is here.
Yeah.
And
the kids are going to be here.
Everybody's going to be here. And so what happens to you sometimes in those situations is you can tolerate so much. You'll help me
cook
do some preparations.
Whatever.
Exactly. And then you're at your point, the point where you're like, I'm going to my room.
Yeah.
And because
and
I say that you're full.
Yeah,
That's how I describe it. You're full.
Yeah.
You gotta
so,
go.
What I've learned to do, and it's still sometimes a work in progress, is that I let you know, hey, I have to go to my room.
Yep.
Or I have to go away, or whatever.
Yes.
So that I can I don't say this part, but so that I can de-escalate, so that I can de-stress, so that I can...
Well, we know the language now,
Yes.
you and I.
Yes.
I mean, there's sometimes you don't even... There are times where you come to me...
With
you
a
get my
look.
attention. I look at you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You don't even say a word. Just like,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Well, I have another question about this. Was the realization that one word, has more than one meaning? I don't even know if I said that clear because I'm all stuffy. Oh, that a word can have more than one meaning.
Yeah. Whether it be entendres, whether it be literal meanings, whether or definitions.
Was that part of it at the time, or did that come later, or is it just separate to you?
With the terms of emotions, you have to learn the basics before you have to learn to crawl before you can walk. You have to learn to walk before you can run. I know those are very cliche versions, but it's the truth. In so many other situations such as this. You have to learn the basics before you can move on to the advanced stuff.
So explain that. What are the basics to you?
Understanding how you're feeling and putting a term to what you're feeling is the basics. Learning how to, I believe the next step is learning that with all the varieties and variances and all that stuff of these emotions that you might be feeling, that it could be another emotion altogether. Or sometimes it's easy enough to just apply you just use the word. Like vary and descriptors. Using those descriptors to modify the emotion. To tweak the emotion enough to express how you're feeling. And I've also learned through experience and through learning all the different emotions I feel that sometimes what you think you're feeling as one emotion, because of these varieties and variances that may occur in that emotion, that sometimes it turns into a completely different emotion in name. And so
Can you elaborate?
Angry and furious. That's the first one I can think of.
Right.
You can be angry and you can be furious. You can be so angry that you become furious.
Right.
Yeah. And it's very...
Was that like a mind-blowing when you realize that? Like, I can just picture you going, holy moly. This is a huge discovery.
It was a mixture of that and, well, crap, now I have to learn more words.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think that I when you were processing this, were you thinking, or have you ever thought that there is no bad emotion? Like what you feel, and it's important to recognize that there is no bad emotion that you go, oh, that's like we can't. You shouldn't talk about that.
Yeah, you should not shunt away any emotion. There are some emotions that you just should not act upon. Does that make sense?
I'm laughing because I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at this profound understanding that you are explaining today. This awareness that you have that was you're describing didn't come natural, didn't come easy. You had to pick it apart piece by piece,
Yeah.
and then fit it back together in a way that made sense to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that you do know, it makes me so happy that this part stuck with you, that you get it so easily, that there are no bad emotions.
Right.
Feeling something doesn't make you a bad person.
Right.
It can maybe be unhealthy
Right.
if it's what you focus on.
Right.
But there's whatever it is, it's important to recognize that, try to figure out where it came from, and then work through letting it go.
Yeah.
And understanding it.
Yeah. Or sometimes not even letting it go. Sometimes just understanding it so you understand why you're feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need to make changes, you do.
So you were a mentor for
several years.
Yes, with Dr. Ogilvy.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you've said before, we call her Chrissy.
Yeah.
That was so helpful for you.
Yeah.
It was so enlightening and helping you to understand yourself.
Yeah.
What would you say to like right now, to like that 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th grader? You know, like around that time when you had this understanding. How do they start integrating these, excuse me, emotions in these words? Or do you think you have any ideas, any way to share with them, and would it be helpful?
I think so, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The first part that people on the spectrum need to understand is that if you can't explain how you're feeling about something, and you're trying your best to explain to someone how you're feeling about something,
Mm-hmm.
it let me try that again.
Okay.
To identify how you're feeling and what these feelings actually feel like to you. To be able to do that and put words to what you're feeling, I cannot express how much of a huge difference that can make in your life. Because not only are you gaining a better understanding of yourself, but now that you understand what you're feeling, you can explain to others how you're feeling about something, about anything.
Mm-hmm. Right.
At least in regards to your emotions.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
And when I say that I mellowed out,
Mm-hmm.
yes, there were other factors involved, including the other portions of the wraparound services and medications and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, being able to identify how I'm feeling and being able to express it to someone,
Mm-hmm.
it's huge. And the step beyond that, beyond identifying what you're feeling,
Mm-hmm.
is identifying why you feel that way. Because if you can understand why you feel certain ways, then you can then that can lead to an even more, an even better understanding of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And a better understanding of yourself can, by knowing by name what you're feeling, why you're feeling that way. Once you know these things, it's at that point that you can explain to someone that's not yourself, hey, I'm feeling this way. This is why I'm feeling this way.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, not only can you get help from them if you need it, but it can also help others understand you better.
Mm. So do you maybe recommend that parents or caregivers of or family members of somebody that's on the spectrum, of maybe, what do you suggest maybe offering, maybe asking questions about how they feel, or maybe letting them know that that different emotions, what they're called, how they might feel. It's important for caregivers to talk about that, you think?
Yeah.
Do you think that it's important too for people to know that emotions don't have to make sense?
Oh yeah. That's important. Yeah. Because especially in the beginning, that's how you're going to feel, is that you don't understand why you're feeling what you're feeling, let alone what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And once you are able to identify those feelings,
Mm-hmm.
it decreases so much of the stress
Mm-hmm.
that I had as a kid.
Yeah, I think it's huge for two things to happen. One is for there to be no judgment
Right.
about a particular emotion. That
Right.
Not only somebody that is feeling about themselves, but when you're helping somebody to work through understanding emotions,
Mm-hmm.
that you don't place judgment on what it is that they're expressing.
Yeah.
You know, because again, there is no bad emotion.
Right. It's how you react with that emotion
Mm-hmm.
that can be bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's take sadness as an example.
Mm-hmm.
If you're sad, sometimes you feel like crying, right?
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I've learned about other people is that sometimes they have been told growing up that only crybabies cry, or something like that. That real men don't cry, and
Yeah.
all those.
Yeah. Right.
Pardon me for saying this. All those stupid ideas.
Uh-huh.
Emotions need to be expressed in a healthy manner,
I agree.
and crying can be cathartic. How do you say that?
Cathartic.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It can release so much stress,
Mm-hmm.
and you're drained afterwards. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but you feel better, so much better.
Yeah, because letting out an emotion, letting
Yeah.
letting yourself just feel it, and then, experiencing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and then that part of then releasing is just huge.
Yeah. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is that no matter what the emotion is, as long as it does not hurt or endanger others,
Mm-hmm.
it can be done safely. It's not a bad thing to be able to express yourself.
Right. Yeah.
And it's healthy to do so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good. That's an awareness that I think is so important for you to be able to share with people like you're doing.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And you have an understanding of yourself. Again, like I say, you know, and you joke about this too, that you've been to so much therapy, you could, you know, be a
Yeah.
therapist.
Yeah.
But yes, a lot of good came of it. You
Yeah.
know, that you do understand yourself better than probably if you didn't go through all the all the supports that you had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing I'd like to mention about this is that a lot of times people that are on the spectrum may appear to be like a robot or
Disengaged.
yes. A lot of times we're so overwhelmed by our feelings that we don't show them.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how to show them.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes very very difficult for others to understand us.
Mm-hmm.
And hence the misconception that we don't feel.
Mm.
And if anything, we feel too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to weed through all of those feelings all at once to really be able to describe, because there's so much involved when you have this overwhelming feeling and then there's multiple feelings. How do you use your voice to express yourself when you're not exactly sure where you are in that mix? And to say as well, when you, and I've seen this with you, that when you have an emotion, when you have something to share, you need time to process. And when you're sharing and you're expressing yourself, those of us that are communicating with you, we need to give you time to process what we're saying.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah.
So it's really, things are moving so fast in your brain, and you're feeling so much intensity. I think like even pressure on your body, and you know, and so you need time to be able to express yourself.
Yeah. Which last thing is that you've experienced this where I do something I'm not supposed to, or I get in trouble or whatever, and you would try and talk to me about what I did wrong, and I could only pay attention to it for maybe 5 minutes.
If that, yes.
And sometimes, or initially at least, you'd go on and on and on.
Without realizing, just talking away without realizing, oh yeah, you turned off like how long ago in this conversation. You're not part of this conversation anymore. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So it's
need it in little chunks.
Yeah.
So that you can process that and then absorb that and then put it into action next time. Right. I think that's a good point, that you've got to take it in little spurts in order for it to be effective. And what we're talking about specifically is guidance, any kind of input that might be helpful, any kind of request to change your behavior, and the reason why.
Yeah.
Those have to be in little spurts. Yeah.
And a lot of times, especially whenever the longer things that you and I did like that, that a lot of times I'd understand very quickly what you were trying to say. And it just became repetitive to me, so I couldn't focus on it
It's
anymore.
interesting. Yes, I'm glad that you brought that up. And so what I had to figure out that I didn't know is that just because you weren't answering doesn't mean you didn't understand.
Right.
And that's where I had to learn what I just said to give it in little spurts, because I kept talking
when it wasn't
trying
needed.
to help you to understand what's going on, because I thought, well, you're not responding, you're not really getting this, so maybe I'll try it in a different way.
Right.
Maybe I'll put it in a different way.
Right.
But the whole time you're just kind of going, yeah, I got it the first time. Why do you continue speaking to me?
Yeah. And again, that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
I'd leave the room, come back in, and what would happen?
Oh my gosh. Well, no, you're talking about something different entirely. There's been times when I'm upset with you, you're upset with me. You go to get something to drink, you come back and act like there's nothing happening.
Yeah.
Like nothing happened. We're not upset. You're not upset. What, that was a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
Why? Because you got a drink of water in the meantime.
Yeah.
And that was enough. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So it's, again, how I process emotions.
Mm-hmm.
is a huge part of that, because by understanding not just my emotions, but by understanding how I'm feeling about things and the emotions I'm feeling, and why I'm feeling those emotions, as I grew up, I had a much better understanding that I could build upon, and did build upon, so that I could understand things like actions have consequences, and that, and I could understand where other people were coming from with their emotions, and all those different things were built upon those basics of understanding your own emotions.
Mm-hmm. It's huge.
Yeah. And yeah.
Whew!
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's it.
Well, that's it then. Wow. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you wanted to talk about that today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, well, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us. And Josh is incredible. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm so grateful that I get to share you with everyone.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
I'm just happy I can use my experience to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yes, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
Every second of every day.
Yeah.
And so happy to spend this time with you. And if you could please give us 5 stars, if you could go to SonyaKing.com. It's SONYAKING. We're working on stuff. Got some stuff on the books that's not quite here yet, but come January we'll be hitting stages.
Oh,
so
cool.
Actually before that, but the official ones will be in January.
Okay.
But,
Cool.
Anyway, Josh, that was amazing. That was amazing. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And everybody out there, happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Almost there, just a few days away.
For everyone here in the U.S. at least.
Yep. Yeah. So be safe. I hope that you're all happy and healthy, and take care of each other, and hopefully it's safe. Everybody can give everybody hugs.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's safe. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Take care of yourselves. Love you.
Bye.